Asia provides, in a lot of cases, exit liquidity for many of these projects. In a way, it's a bit sad, but that's the reality.
I've been actually investigating about PiCoin in Korea. There are actually stores where you can, buy things and services for it. We might see some change in Korea.
This material is for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide accounting, legal, or tax advice, or investment recommendations, or an official statement of Presto or its affiliates.
Hello, this is the Presto Research Podcast. Today I'm sitting down with Peter, head of research at Presto, and we've been talking about recording this podcast for the past week, and we wanted to focus on each individual's vision, or let's say concerns, or what they think is a problem, whatever it be. I want to go deep into each individual's thoughts in the Presto research team. And today I'm starting off with Peter. And Peter here, he thinks there are some problems in crypto in Asia specifically. So Peter, why don't you lay out what you think the problem in crypto is in Asia?
Yeah, I guess it's something that I've been kind of feeling for the last few years. The biggest, I think since about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I started to sense that all the major projects that come out of that makes to the top 10, 20 are usually driven by the project whose leaders are located outside Asia. Maybe there was one, and there was Luna, I think. But outside that, the top 20 projects, if you look at it, many of them were, maybe with the exception of Tron as well, many of them are actually initiated and started and led by the project leaders in the US or Europe. And I kind of wondered why that's the case, because it doesn't really gel with another narrative that exists in the industry, which is that Asia is the future of the crypto, and Asia is the important market for crypto, so on and so forth. What I came to realize is that the importance of Asia in the crypto industry is 95% Asians are the sources of liquidity. Or to put it even more bluntly, Asia provides, in a lot of cases, exit liquidity for many of these projects. So that's, in a way, it's a bit sad, but that's the reality. And when I think about why then there isn't very viable crypto projects coming out of Asia, there could be a lot of reasons, but the one main reason that I think that contributes to this current state of Asian crypto scene is the fact that the value that the blockchain technology delivers doesn't really gel well with the traditional Asian value system. And let me explain what I mean by that. So I think every technology, it's a tool, basically. It's a tool to help you realize the value that the society holds. And that value may differ from one society to another society. In the case of, let's take an example. Like let's take internet, or let actually even step back a little bit. Let's take a rice cooker as an example, right? Very easy example to understand. So rice cooker, it's maybe it was invented sometime in the early 20th century by the Japanese, most likely, and it solved a lot of problems for many of Asian wives at the time, right? Because before that, if you were to cook rice, you had to spend it was a very, very troublesome, and you had to spend a lot of hours in the kitchen, and the success rate is also not very consistent. Sometimes you burn the rice, or undercooked, all kinds of problems. But when the rice cooker was invented, this was a huge brought huge benefits to the kitchens in Asia, including Japan, Korea, and China, wherever, any country where the rice is a staples. Now, people will say that this is a great invention only if rice is a big part of your staples. If you bring your rice cooker to Europe, for instance, it won't be as big of a useful technology as it is in Asia, right? So technology does something, it provides utility, but that utility is appreciated more in one culture over others. Now, another example that I think it may be more closely related to the blockchain is internet. So internet, you would think that it's a useful technology. Like you didn't question, right? I mean, we know it's a useful technology. And why is it useful? Well, it's useful because it allows a frictionless information exchange, right? There's no intermediaries. And this is a way to exchange information without the middleman, basically. And this type of utility is useful in cultures or society or countries where freedom of information and freedom of speech is highly valued, right? But then there are countries where these things are not valued. A good example is North Korea. I mean, we talked about, it seems like every episode we talked about North Korea for some reason, but so okay, North Korea or maybe other types of countries where there's a dictatorship and control over information, very authoritarian regimes around the world. And in these places, internet is actually in a lot of cases is blocked. So in North Korea, for instance, average people does not have an access to internet. They have something similar. I think it's called like a 광명 in Korean. But it's basically intranet, private internet, highly controlled by the North Korean government. So type of information you get is actually not the same thing that you get on the internet, because it's essentially a private intranet, right? So this technology, internet, is not, you could say that it's not very useful in North Korea because it doesn't gel with the value that the North Korean system, the political system, doesn't really encourage or appreciate. Now, same thing with the blockchain. Now let's talk about blockchain. Blockchain is, what is it? I mean, like, okay, it's a lot of things to a lot of people, but if you just focus on its proven value proposal, it is frictionless value exchange rail. So I mentioned internet is the frictionless information exchange rail. This is the same thing, except instead of information, you're exchanging value, right? We can tell that this is the proven value proposition because, for instance, stablecoin is the most, it's considered a killer app, most widely used case for blockchain. In some countries, this frictionless value exchange utility is more appreciated than others. The countries that don't appreciate this, there are many actually, and a lot of them are in Asia actually. So these countries usually have very closed financial system with a capital control. So basically, people are not free to take money in and out of the country very easily. In Asia, I think the countries that have relatively free capital movement is basically Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and these are the major ones. Definitely not China, definitely not Korea even, not Taiwan, not Vietnam, not many of these Southeast Asian countries. So why, if you think about why that's the case, I mean, there could be many reasons, but basically the freedom, like a free movement of capital is viewed as something very risky to society in these countries. So they place a lot of surveillance and control. You have to register and report if you want to move capital in and out of the country. And so you can say that the it doesn't really gel well with the value system of some of those Asian countries. Um, there's a little bit deeper constraints as well, cultural constraints that we can get into if you're interested. But like maybe I'll stop there because I talked for too long.
Yeah, let's get into the cultural aspects because I think what you're talking about is how the government is approaching blockchain technology and like these walled financial gardens. I view it as the same way. When I look at the Korean government, I think they're not doing much to improve any like innovation in blockchain technology or like we don't even have a Bitcoin ETF. People can't even like institutions they can't even buy coins on exchanges even though we had like the biggest market since what 2017. So I really do get what you're saying, but what I was thinking while you were talking was, but do the people want it? Like the government and the people are two different entities, right? So let's get into the cultural aspects. Do you think the people, the populace, are like the government?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think generally speaking, I'm not talking about the people in crypto, right? Just broadly speaking, the broad society, um, they don't know what they want, in my view. I think they don't really, they were not brought up to appreciate the value of individual liberty because that tradition is not rooted in Asian society. Individual liberty is a value that was first kind of came to fruition in the West first. I happen to believe it's a global value, but just the way I look at it is it's a global value, but it just the West came to its realization before other regions. And this came about maybe in the early modern era, like maybe, right after the Renaissance, around 14th, 15th, 16th century. Slowly, it didn't happen overnight, very slowly. And once they kind of became their core value system, and then they start to think about, okay, what's the best economic system that can help the society realize this value, individual liberty. And as a result, they came out with a market-based system. And they also thought about, okay, what's the best political or governance system to realize this value? And as a result of that thinking process, they arrived at democratic government, democracy, basically, inspired by traditions that they discovered, in the classic ancient Greek society, for instance. And then likewise, everything they do, because they still maintain that value more or less. I mean, I think there's been some pendulum, sometimes the swings, left and right. But like generally speaking, I think the main core trend was that they were, society was evolving centered around this core value. And therefore, when the internet technology came along, also, the internet was initially started as a military technology in the 50s, but over the course of the, 60s, 70s, and 80s, a lot of developers, academia, they spent time and resources to cultivate this into more commercial and viable technology because they believed in the value that this technology delivers, which is a free and a frictionless exchange of information. Because they were the society that values these. It was because the U.S. was the society that the values what this technology can deliver. And then I think the blockchain is the same thing. Blockchain is, it started in the US. The Bitcoin started in the US because in the US there were people who believes in believes in
the cypherpunks.
Yeah. I mean, it's represented by the cypherpunks, but basically their core value is individual liberty. Therefore, even something that is as important as money, it should be free from a state intervention. And it sounds very radical to a lot of Asians because we all just take it for granted that the money is something that should be controlled and issued and managed by the government. But it doesn't have to be that way because, in fact, if you look at the society, like if you look at the history, 95% of our history was when we used the money that was developed in a bottom-up basis, not top-down basis. People slowly came to an agreement that something, either seashells or gold or silver, different point in time, it was different objects, but it was never society like somebody like a king or the government forcing it down the throat that this should be used as a money. It was more like slowly people came to an agreement that some commodity should be used as a money. But then maybe in 19th century or early 20th century, I think when the Keynesian economic thoughts were becoming popular, even in the West, the government slowly kind of expanded their influence over what should be used as a money. Right after the World War II, briefly, I think there was an attempt to peg the money supply to gold. But in the 1971, basically, even that attempt was abandoned. And now we are in this current financial regime where government basically has 100% control over money supply. But my point being, human beings have spent better part of our history dealing with the money that people, agreed on a bottom-up basis, not top-down basis.
Yeah, and I also think Asian countries' economic model are kind of closely tied to why they prefer these type of top-down currencies. For example, with currency controls, they can devalue their currency to boost their exports. They can stimulate their economy and all that. And since basically every Asian country except a few are mostly export-driven economies, I think having a alternative currency doesn't really make sense to the government or even the people who are kind of responsible for influencing the government in various ways. So like I think history and current economic trends kind of direct people in Asia to actually prefer fiat currencies. But what's funny what's funny is though, I've been actually investigating about Picoin in Korea. I went down to my hometown and I asked my dad's friend, and and I mean not my dad's friend, my friend's dad and my friend's dad's friend about how many people actually mine this and use it, and it's actually there's a lot of people actually who own Picoin, and there are actually stores where you can buy things and services for it. So I think people kind of like the idea of these. I think they mostly think of it as a coupon. I don't think they really care about the underlying technology. I think they just think it as free money and all that. But what I'm trying to say is at its core, I think people I mean not people, but I think there is an innate I don't know, should I call it a desire or tendency for people to just use things that are given to them. And maybe if we continue this trend where, my mom and dad's, like, they use these Pi coins or whatever coins, we might see some change in Korea, in Asia in general. But I don't know. This is just yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about Picoin actually, so I don't know, the purpose behind why this coin was created and all that. But I think generally, I think good framework to have when it comes to what money is something that was advocated by this 19th century economist William Stanley Jevons. He basically summarized, the three functions of money. I think we all heard about it, right? The store of value, medium of exchange, and unit of account. These three things are acquired by commodity, but not all simultaneously, but gradually, one by one. So, for instance, usually the store of money has to come store of money quality has to be acquired first, because in order for something to be accepted as a medium of exchange, people will it'll have to be something that already people believe can hold value, right? So the store of value feature has to be obtained by the particular commodity first, and then after that, second stage is people start to accept it or use it as a medium of exchange. And the very last stage is when people use it as a unit of account, i.e., to measure as a measurement for value. Then that particular object finally becomes money. And this is the kind of theory advocated by that economist I mentioned, not something that I made up. Um, so I think whether it's a pie coin or something else, um, I think every commodity has to kind of go through this stage over a very long period of time, and then that's how the society comes to an agreement that something is a money. That's how I think a seashell in China, for instance, in ancient Chinese civilization, was used as money. That's how the salt was eventually became like a money in ancient Rome, and that's how silver and gold eventually became a form of money in other parts of the world.
Yeah. And when I talk to you, you know a lot about these things. Like we met in Hong Kong, we had dinner, and I also listened to your past interviews on the internet, on YouTube, like in various channels, and um you have a traditional finance background. But there must be some point where you thought you had to join this industry, the crypto industry. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So, kind of my journey into this industry, maybe you could say it started in 2011 when I was still in banking, and I read an article on Bloomberg about Bitcoin, and when I first read it, I just remember that why is this even a thing? Because I thought money is already digital, and they say this is digital money. So, like, what's so special about it? And I couldn't understand at all, like what the whole thing was all about. And then 2015, um, I had a bit of extra money that I could invest, and I was like trying to figure out where to invest in. And then uh, I saw a documentary on airplane about Bitcoiners. And then I thought it was quite interesting. So maybe I thought maybe I should invest it. Um, and then I thought there was an ETF at the time. I mean, like how naive I was to think that there was an ETF might exist for Bitcoin, but obviously it didn't exist. Um, and then so that means that only way I could invest in Bitcoin was through actual like a trading in an exchange. And this concept of like a private key, public key, and everything, it just sounded too complicated to me. So I just gave up, and then I invest my money into something else, some stock, I think. And then 2 years later came the crazy 2017 bull market, right? And then Bitcoin went from $200 to $20,000, so basically 100x. I could not sleep for days, thinking that how stupid I was to miss this opportunity, only because I was very intellectually lazy, right? I didn't think about digging even harder to understand it better, but I just thought because it's something I'm not very familiar with, I just passed on it, and then I missed it, basically 100x opportunity. So that's when I decided, okay, I better study this more seriously. And then, you know, after that, I saw CME listing Bitcoin futures. That happened in December 2017, and for me, that was a big signal that this thing is not going to go away. It's going to become institutionalized eventually. So, not only did I just not only so I simply didn't. I did more than just studying, basically. So I thought maybe this is a area where I should pursue my career, and I started talking to people in the industry, and one thing led to another, and I got my first job in crypto at a Korean exchange called Corbit. I started there in September 2018, initially as a head of DV, and then when Corbit decided to launch a research team, I was given a task to build up the team there, and then luckily, Presto also found out about me, and then we we had a great fit, I thought. So decided to make a move over to Presto.
Yeah. The 2015, 2017 story, it deeply resonates with me because I basically had the same, thing occur to me. I just saw Bitcoin 2015. It was $200. Yeah, it was back then. It was $200. I was like, yo, what is this? I bought it on Corbit. Actually, I bought some on Corbit. Then I was like, well, I kind of need this money right now, so I just withdrew it. And then so yeah, deep regrets. And
Yeah.
since you were in like these let's say like high profile positions and people, I mean, in Korea, people, everyone knows you as Corbett, like the research guy and all that. And I listened to some of your stories, and but I want to like listen more about like some, let's say, unhappy moments that happened to you while you were in Korea and all. Like, do you have any moments that made you upset?
I'm so happy that I'm in this industry, and only regret that I have is that I didn't join sooner. But there were moments of me feeling very kind of uneasy about being where I was or where I am, and that was when Luna went down, and prosecutors in Korea wanted to investigate this, and I was at Corbett at the time, and basically they because the Luna was listed in Corbett and other exchanges as well. I mean, everybody had it listed, right? So basically, and I was as a head of a research, I was kind of chairing the committee that approves listing and delisting of crypto assets. So I was the one that they wanted to investigate. So I was called in as a witness. Officially, I was called in as a witness. But the way they treat it doesn't, for prosecutors. What I learned is that they don't. It doesn't matter whether you're a witness or somebody actually they are suspected of committing a crime. They tend to treat you not very nicely. I think so. I was called in maybe around 2 o'clock, and then maybe left around 11:30 p.m. Um, and yeah, I mean, I didn't enjoy that experience at all.
What
And yeah.
is it okay to ask what happened during those hours?
Um, so I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but I think what I can say is that usually these investigations, they already have a set of scenario. They already have a storyline, and they want some comments or evidence or statements that kind of fit their narrative. So if you say, I mean, they're not. I got an impression that they are not really interested in truth. Yeah, they just they want some story that they can report to their seniors, and yeah, they want to collect some evidence that support it. Just like journalism in Korea, actually, it's another thing. When I was at Corbett, I often get questions from journalists, and especially during, also I got a lot of questions during the Luna debacle, because this was a time when the entire society was very much interested in what's happening in the crypto industry. So they also, when they usually come approach me, they already have a story already laid out, and they just want some quotes from me to fill in the gaps and strengthen their argument, which I thought was kind of, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to pursue my crypto career outside Korea, because there's so many misinformation and bad narratives that I just didn't want to associate myself with. And plus also the fact that there's very limited opportunity, because the governments just have a very tight control over what can and cannot be done in crypto in Korea, without any basis for law. These things are actually very arbitrary decision taken by the government agents in Korea. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, yeah, all these things happen. So yeah, I mean, I like the industry. I think there's so much. It helps you grow so much more and provides you with a lot of perspectives that you would otherwise not get. Um, but better place to pursue these benefits of this industry is not inside Korea, but outside, I think.
Yeah, I also had very similar experiences with you, like kind of like you with journalists in Korea. They always like ask questions. They already have the story. Like they already
Yeah.
want to write a certain story. It's not investigation. It's basically just getting quotes from credible sources so they can, like you said, enforce their argument, which is kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I didn't really like that too, and I
Yeah.
always kind of complained. It was
Yeah.
but still it kind of worked that way, and yeah, I also have some discontent about like how the Korean government and the society looks upon crypto and all. So, but I still, still just like yourself, I try to look at the brighter side. I want to, grow myself. I want to, do things. And I guess that's why you went to Hong Kong. And during the last podcast, you also mentioned about, how Hong Kong is, kind of sovereign. Like it's people kind of have a misconception of how the CCP has control over Hong Kong. And after listening to you, I kind of realized that, you know, it's not really, Xi Jinping is trying to juice that Hong Kong juice out of that city. And yeah, due to you, I got to know these things, and I think a lot of people would have come to you and say thank you a lot pretty often, and I guess that what makes it worth.
Yeah. So I mean, there are many happy moments. Since I moved to this industry, and definitely since I became more of a public figure in Korea. I mean, I had a chance to talk to a lot of people, and they're total strangers would come to me and thank me for my insights and all that. And these were, no, although I don't get any monetary compensation, these are the things that makes me feel very happy and very satisfied with my where I am in my current position in the crypto industry. Um, but yeah, also in Hong Kong, I feel that I'm at the right place. I mean, I moved to Hong Kong, in late 90s, and I've lived better part, like almost all of my professional life in Hong Kong. So I might be a little bit biased, but what I realized is that in the startup, you use this term product market fit, right? PMF. And I think places like Hong Kong or financial hubs in general has a great PMF with a blockchain technology. Because like I said earlier, blockchain technology's proven value proposition is frictionless value exchange rail. And that type of utility is most appreciated in jurisdictions where they value frictionless value transfer. Not every country, not every culture values that. I mentioned it earlier that in Asia it's just a handful. Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore. This is also a little bit of like a geeky banking talk, but there's this thing called the MSCI in the financial industry. It stands for Morgan Stanley MSCI, Morgan Stanley Capital International. It's an international organization that puts together equity market index, basically, and they divide it between the universe into developed and developing market. Now, Korea is right now, despite what Koreans might think, it's in the developing market because their basis for judging whether a market is developed or developing is one of the criteria is the free movement of capital. And right now, Korea doesn't have that. So we are in their view. So that's why we're classified under developing or the emerging market using their terminology. So we are not one of them. In Asia, only country that's in the developed market is actually those three countries I mentioned, Japan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. They also have Australia, New Zealand is under Asia, so you can throw that in there. So basically, these are the jurisdictions where they appreciate free movement of capital. And so in these places, I think it has a good PMF with the blockchain. Korea doesn't, unfortunately, right now. And there's a lot of talk right now in Korea. I noticed on the local press that oh, because Trump is trying to push this a stable coin and everything, we should maybe do something. Yes, we have to do something, but one thing that needs to happen in the traditional finance and the current financial regulation is to free up or revise all these FX regulations so that there is freer movement of capital. Unless we do that, when you adopt blockchain technology, it's not going to gel well with our current system. It's like trying to, it's like it'll be like you are driving. It's like you're driving a tractor. It's like a US dollar is. So it's like a US dollar is like a sports car, and legacy system is it can be compared to like a crowded city traffic with a lot of traffic lights. So you have to stop like every whatever 100 meters. Stablecoin is like a highway for sports car. So that's why stablecoin is a lot more efficient because there's no traffic lights, right? Now, Korean won is not a sports car right now. The currency, it is a tractor. So for tractor, doesn't super like these highway don't matter because a tractor only travels within a farm anyway. So whether you put tractor on a highway or not, it's not going to create much value. So the first thing I think the Korean government needs to do is to deregulate the financial sector, deregulate these very strict control over capital movement in and outside the country. I'm not saying that do something that no other countries are doing. Just do it to the level that the developed markets are doing, like Hong Kong or Singapore or Japan. It's not like we are not. I'm not asking Korea to do something that is completely like outrageous that other countries are not doing. Just by deregulating to the level of other developed markets, like Japan, for instance, we can already pave the way for a better blockchain adoption for the entire system.
But do you think when Korea deregulates, do you think like there will be any capital inflow coming? Could my concern, my theory in why the government is so reluctant to deregulating the financial markets is because we have some strong PTSD with the 1990s IMF crisis. We know what's going to happen when people flee the market, when people sell KRW. We have a export-driven economy. Our economy is solely dependent on external factors. And the only internal factor that we can control is our currency. Therefore, it's like their last effort to have leverage over the markets. So if they deregulate that, and when the country is not in a good shape, I believe everyone's going to be selling their KRW for Tether on up it. Like I don't know. Like I mean, in crisis, like if like if we get another COVID dump, then everyone's going to be selling their KRW. The dollar's going to go like up to like 2001 per dollar, and nobody wants that. But everyone will try to front run everyone in the country if they know how to do it. So, yeah, it's all good on paper. But if I were a policymaker, would I make that decision? Is the question I ask. So, I know it's kind of I complain about these things a lot, but it's kind of selfish to think that way too. But I don't know, like it's for to future proof the growth of Korea. I think this must happen at some point, but it's going to be a very hard decision in my opinion.
It'll be a hard decision, yeah. And the reason why it's hard is because it's an unfamiliar territory for the Korean policymakers, not because it's a bad one. I think what makes it bad is, I mean, you're absolutely right that the trauma from the 97 crisis is the biggest hindrance for implementing this free capital, open capital system. But let's just think about, okay, but then are we the only export economy that has to have this closed FX regime? No, we are not. There are many other countries that are export dependent, but still with a free capital movement. I just mentioned Japan as an example. They have the same props. They have same very similar structure. There are many other smaller economies in Europe, for instance, that is part of MSCI developed market. That you know, much smaller economy, but they have an open capital system. Um, so, like, why do we always have to think that these are the big risk factor out for us, and therefore we have to keep the tight control over the currency movement? I think policymakers need to study why it's possible in other countries but not us. And I think what they will realize is this: what prevents what prevents like this disorderly capital outflow is not the lack of control by the government, but it's more resilient economic underlying economic system itself. So if you are an exporter with a very strong product, foreigners are not gonna. They're very confident that you're gonna be able to earn your dollars with your excellent export products, and therefore, the reason why '97 happened was basically a lot of financial institutions were borrowing U.S. dollars on a short-term loan, short-term maturity, and investing it in a long-term, long-duration asset. So there was a duration mismatch. And therefore, when KRW started to depreciate, foreigners didn't want to be the last one to exit. So there was a rush of this capital outflow. And then many of the Korean exports at the time was not considered very competitive. So foreigners were concerned about Korea's ability to earn back U.S. dollars enough in future to replenish their forex reserve. So the fix to this is, number one, make sure that your export products are competitive. And number two, don't do this stupid borrowing on the short term overseas and then investing in a long duration asset. Don't do this asset duration mismatch. So I think somebody like Japan's done it fairly well. I mean, already, like they have a huge domestic savings base, and then that's where the Japanese government mostly borrows from. Not so much from overseas, but they borrow from their own people. So that doesn't change. Although we often talk about how Japan has a very high government debt ratio. That's why we don't see like a currency crisis in Japan, because like their debt is self-financed internally. So it's just a more smart financing plan, coupled with making sure that your ability to earn dollars overseas remain very competitive. That's the way to prevent disorderly capital outflow, not some arbitrary, like putting an arbitrary barrier on people's free will of moving the money.
Yeah.
Just my view.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think you're right. But, the prospects of Korea right now, I don't think like anyone really thinks that Korea is going to be like, it's going to grow more. I think we're at the peak. I think basically everyone shares that Korea has peaked and it's only downhill from now. So I think policymakers realize this too. And that's why I think they're kind of desperate and kind of, they just don't want to be the person who pops the balloon. Eventually the balloon, something has to pop to actually, build, like bring in another balloon and fill that with water, right? So it's just a bunch of people just passing the buck to the next guy, and then eventually it will just, blow up. And I guess that's when we get a reset and have some good measures to be implemented. Yeah. So finally, I think I want to talk about what your end goal is in crypto. You must have joined crypto because you thought this is a great opportunity. And after you came into crypto, you must have thought about a lot of things. You went to the prosecutor's office, you talked to a lot of people, you realized even today, I learn a lot of things. I believe that you would learn every day. And, you change. You change how you think, and your end goals kind of change too. So do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I believe that crypto is a useful technology for humanity. And, one person that always inspires me a lot is Elon Musk. I know he's has somewhat became a controversial figure lately, but when Elon Musk says that he's doing things to help humanity, I think he really means it. Um, and I think it's a noble value that people should pursue. I mean, well, maybe not, I shouldn't say pursue, but it's a value that I like to pursue myself. I mean, people can pursue whatever the value they want. If the money is everything, yeah, for those who believe the money is everything, then yeah, go after money. But for me, what's meaningful is do something that contributes the longevity of the civilization, which is, you can tell that I'm already very heavily influenced by Elon Musk, right? And then but as somebody who spent like over 20 years in banking, I've always been wondering what are the things that I can do, leveraging my background to help the mankind. And for a long time, I couldn't find anything until I came across Bitcoin. But not even the first initial few years, because I didn't really fully understand ethos or values behind the technology. I only knew, okay, maybe it's a new asset class and that's going to go up a lot, and maybe I should jump into to make money like a lot of other people. But then as I spend more time in the industry, I came to realize that this technology is trying to achieve something, and that is, in my view, more frictionless and flawless collaboration between people in different parts of the world, because there's a lot of obstacles in achieving that. There's a lot of, what I call frictions in achieving that. And many of that comes from the fact that we have these fiat currencies that are controlled by each government, and it's very hard to transact. And that kind of act as an obstacles against people in different parts of the world collaborating and doing things together. And when something like a Bitcoin or some other form of, I mean, eventually Bitcoin, I hope, but it could take a long time. So in between now and then, maybe something like a stable coin, some other types of assets that are transacted on the blockchain can help facilitate more collaboration amongst the people in different jurisdictions. And I think the more people collaborate, the better. And I think by having more people collaborate with each other, we can solve a lot of problems in this world that can potentially shorten or hurt longevity of the civilization. So that's why I think, I want to be in this industry, and then help bring this technology to the mainstream audience. And good starting point is maybe educating public about what the hell this technology is all about, because people don't really understand it, especially in Asia. They all think it's just a pumping and dumping. So I want to start. My first step is, by educating people and creating contents like this.
Yeah. I also started as a very personal endeavor. Like my whole career, I guess it just started from me trying to find a job, and then I'm here recording this thing with you. And I mean, I don't know, like, to be honest, I don't have like a very like grand like plan. Like, to be honest, I'm just doing it for myself. But I guess what I do for myself can help humanity in some way. If that makes sense. But
yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, it does. I think not everybody has to kind of do what I'm feel the same way as I do. Like, you can, even for me, my initial motivation was to make money. Yeah, but it's just as I spend more time and then came to like better understand the kind of a history and background to this technology, I kind of came to develop this view, which is not more than 3 years old. So it's fairly new thing to me, but it's something that I strongly believe in. And yeah, so I don't expect everybody in this industry to kind of feel the same way.
okay, yeah, it was great talking to you. Yeah, I think the first time I talked to you in Hong Kong during that dinner, I thought you were a very nice person. I thought you were very knowledgeable, but today I got to know you more, and I'm glad that we have sit down and talked about these various topics. I hope we can do this another day. Something into more like let's say trendy topics. Today's episode was about Peter, just you. and we can just opine on recent trends, especially about Trump and everything's going down right now.
Going down again. I thought it went up yesterday.
Yeah. So everyone who's listening, thank you for tuning in. This was the Presto Research Podcast. Your host, Ju Hyuk, and Peter, thank you for tuning in. I think I will see you another day because the next episode will be another guy from the research team. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thanks. It's been fun.